From a peanut farmer in the South to becoming the 39th president of the United States, tonight the country is remembering Jimmy Carter, who passed away Sunday at the age of 100. Carter, who announced in February of 2023 he was accepting hospice care, died at his home in Plains, Georgia on Sunday. President Joe Biden today ordered all flags to fly at half-staff for the next 30 days in honor of Jimmy Carter. Carter's state funeral is set for January 9th, which has been deemed a national day of mourning. Jimmy Carter lived to be older than any other previous U.S. president. His single term and his remarkable and lengthy post-presidency left a mark on this nation. 17's Robert Price tonight takes a look back at the life and the legacy of Jimmy Carter.
Many Americans will say that Jimmy Carter's single term in office, hurt by inherited economic problems, the 1979 energy crisis, and the Iranian hostage crisis, reflected badly on his presidency. But the passage of time and reevaluation by historians suggest a more complicated story. In light of his remarkable 42-year post-presidency, the longest in U.S. history, Jimmy Carter's legacy only blossomed with the passage of years. Almost a half-century after his election, few may remember, if they ever knew, the tumultuous circumstances of his rise to power, from Georgia peanut farmer to governor of a state deeply divided by racial segregation, to healer-in-chief of a nation riven by Watergate and Vietnam. Historian and educator Jeremy Adams says Carter assumed the presidency at a time the nation was crying out for change.
I think that Jimmy Carter's presidency could only have happened at this specific moment in American history. So in the aftermath of Nixon, you have the corruption of Watergate. You have what we call the accidental presidency of Ford. You have a guy who says, you know what, I'm going to run as an outsider. And he campaigned in over 30 states that allowed him to give this narrative of, look, I'm an outsider. I haven't been in D.C. That idea that this is a good man with some political experience, and this is the guy who should really represent the values of the country, that really played well in 1976. I don't think it would have happened earlier in the decade, and it definitely didn't work in the 1980s.
Georgia native Richard Bean, retired longtime publisher of the Bakersfield Californian and a former radio talk show host, covered Carter's years as governor as an Atlanta-based reporter for United Press International. He said many were stunned by Carter's fast descent, even media members who knew him well.
Well, I'll tell you, the Georgia Press Corps, we didn't give him a prayer. We thought, nobody knows who this guy is. Coming out of nowhere, the country was ready for a change. Carter offered something fresh and new, much as Donald Trump did in 2016.
But Carter's strength, his hands-on approach, was also his weakness. The task-oriented public servant behind that toothy smile was a micromanager.
He may have been one of the most intimidating people I've ever interviewed. He was extremely smart, extremely focused, and he didn't suffer fools well, at least among the press corps. You knew if you were going to talk to Carter that you better have done your homework and know what kind of questions you're asking. He was not a mean man at all. He wasn't short, but he was so focused.
Carter's single 4-year term was hurt by inherited economic recession, a unique combination of stagnation and inflation known as stagflation, fuel shortages, and difficulties with his own Democratic Congress. And then a charismatic challenger, Ronald Reagan.
He actually got a lot done, you know. He did the SALT Treaty, you know. He was the first president to really warn us about climate change and the promise of solar, which was not popular, you know, at the time. He presided over the Camp David Accords. You know, he got Israel and the PLO together. At the same time, he inherited a really bad recession.
And Reagan won in a rout. Carter went on to have one of the most dynamic post-presidencies in the nation's history. It began one morning with a bolt of pre-dawn inspiration.
Rosalind Carter wakes up at 3 a.m. and he's literally sitting out of bed, and he said, "I've got it." And she said, "What do you mean I've got it?" He says, "I know what we're going to do. We're going to help the world solve problems." Now, this is an engineer talking, right? And he created the Carter Center, which goes around the world funding disease eradication efforts and making sure elections are fair and those type of things. But it came to him one day that he wanted to help the world solve problems, and part of that was Habitat. And what an amazing story that's been.
Yes, Habitat for Humanity, perhaps the signature affiliation of Carter's supposed retirement years. Since its inception the same year Carter was elected president, the nonprofit has built homes for 39 million people in 70 countries, including right here in Kern County. Ron White, the executive director of Kern County Habitat for Humanity, said Carter was not one to merely sign checks and pose for photos. He rolled up his sleeves.
Can imagine you come onto a home site for Habitat for Humanity and you look to your left and you're building your home with the help of President Carter. I mean, that says a lot about who the man is.
Gene Tackett was elected as a Kern County supervisor in 1976 and was on the same ballot as Carter. He says Carter set an example for how one should conduct oneself as a former president. But in office or out, Tackett said, Carter hewed closely to the things that matter most.
He was always about truth, and his faith was important for him because that helped him sort of guide his way through problems. But family, I mean, he was for all those things that make this country great.
I think you remember him as a man who loved his God, loved his family, and loved his country. And those used to be the three pillars. That's no longer the case. But now, looking at today's politics, looking back, it sounds pretty good to me.
God, family, country. Those words can be hollow, or they can ring with authenticity. Say what you will about President Jimmy Carter, but we knew where he stood on those fundamentals of character. In downtown Bakersfield, Robert Price, 17 News.